Thank you everyone for joining us today, which is our last virtual opportunity to connect and learn about resources here available for your students as they start their CMC journey. My name is Jeannie Scalmanini. I'm Executive Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement, and our office is excitedly preparing for your students and your arrival to campus in what is now just a bit over a week. This is getting real, everyone, getting close, and we can't wait. It's going to be a wonderful day on Sunday the 18th for orientation. But in the meantime, we do have this one last virtual session, and this one is extremely important, and we are very excited to be joined by Diana D.T. Graves, alum from the class of 1998. I think I said that right, here at CMC. And she also just happens to be our Vice President of Student Affairs, which is incredible. So she knows all things CMC, all things student related, and she's very passionate about it all. She's also joined by some excellent members of her team that I will let her introduce. A little bit of housekeeping. Definitely feel free to ask questions as we move along through the presentation, and you'll do that by using the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be monitoring that. And there will definitely be some time for Q&A. So if you would rather, if you feel more comfortable, you can also send those questions to me privately, and I can share them with the team. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Diana.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeannie. Welcome to everyone. It's so great to see all these names. We have been making phone calls to all of our new students throughout the summer. And so when I see, names popping up, I'm like, oh, that's probably Elsie's dad, or that's probably Robert's mom. And it's just so fun to know how soon you're all going to be arriving to campus. So we are going to cover today a bunch of information about health and well-being. Jess Nielsen is on the screen. Jess, if you can wave. She is our Senior Assistant Dean for Mental Health and Health Promotion. And also joining us, but not on camera right now, is Jimmy Doan, and he is our Dean of Students. And so Jess and I are, there he is. And so Jess and I are going to go ahead and lead out on this particular session and look forward to any questions that you have. So Jess, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, perfect. We'll get going. So the, I think, let's see, Jess, I think you might be in presentation mode, which is actually not the worst thing, but is that what everybody's seeing, or they have the one slide? Yeah, presentation mode. Maybe just do slideshow, Jess, if you're able to get out of that.
Yes, trying. You'd think after 4 years of this, I know how to do this. Let's see if this is any better. Give me one sec. Sorry, everyone.
No, you're good. While you're pulling that up, I'll just kind of briefly go through the goals of the session. So some of our slides are intentionally wordy. We have a lot of folks that are listening to this from locations where they may not have great sound. So we just wanted to make sure that the information was also in writing on the screen. When we are thinking about health and well-being, I mean, we're really looking at this from a very developmental lens. So we have all these students that are coming. Many of them have been, haven't been living on their own before. And so we want to provide some information about what that transition is going to look like from their lens. Want to give you a sense of how we think about student development and health and well-being as an institution. So you have a sense of the kinds of goals and focus areas that we prioritize. Lots of partnership with parents, but it does look a little different when your student is in college. And so we want to clarify that so you feel really comfortable with what your role is and how we can partner together. Also want to, help all of us so that we're kind of on the same page with giving students a lot of ownership about their own experiences. We'll talk tons about resources, and then of course answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so one of the important things, and probably a huge reason that you picked Claremont, is that we are part of this consortium. So when we think about the 5C environment, we're talking about Pomona, Pitzer, Scripps, Harvey Mudd, and of course, Claremont McKenna College. And part of the joy of being in the consortium is that we co-fund all of these different 5C resource groups that are all located within very close proximity to our campus. And once your students are here, they're going to hear a ton about all of these different kinds of resources. There's also an application that they'll be able to download on their phones that provides immediate access to all of these different resources. And it just helps where students can then build community around all kinds of interests and identities and other elements that are really salient to them and their experience within the consortium with students from all of the different campuses. One of the things you'll notice on here that I just want to be clear, because it can be a little confusing, there's campus safety, which is listed in the blue at the top of the screen. Campus safety is a 7-college Claremont Colleges entity, but CMC also has its own public safety department. And so we have dedicated officers that are on patrol 24/7 on our campus. They share a dispatch office with campus safety and the same radio frequency, so they're in constant communication. But we are the one of the 5 schools that has their own dedicated team that is on campus. All right, Jess. Perfect. So when we think about some of these shifts, and I just want to like frame this for folks, the residential environment is a huge shift. So, you know, we're talking about sharing space often for the first time. We used to ask students, you know, in the big session, how many of you shared a room? And like 80% of hands would go up. And now when we ask that question, it's more like half. So that's a huge adjustment. Thinking about managing different levels of noise. Where are you going to study? It might not be in your room. You know, you might need to identify different study areas on campus. Thinking about managing personal finances. How are you going to shop for personal necessities, scheduling your own appointments, completing their own paperwork, organizing meals and, you know, medication management, all these kinds of things that come with living independently are very real, as is just missing home, right? So I remember as a student at CMC, I mean, I loved it, but man, I was homesick initially. I was still tucking brothers and sisters into bed at night and that sort of stuff when I left, and it's hard. And so we spend a lot of time just putting words on that feeling. You know, I miss home, I miss my pets, I miss my parents. And once because we're kind of owning that feeling and talking about it a lot, we hope that it eases that transition and sort of normalizes the stress that can come with a new residential environment. Academics, big shift around academics. So up to this point, students have really necessarily had to focus on achievement. So they've had to think about grades. They've had to think about everything leading up to the college application process. And what happens in that kind of an environment is often there's the sense of students kind of clamoring on top of one another to get to the top and really establish themselves academically. What we're trying to do in this transition to CMC is value the learning more than the grades. We're trying to value the learning more than the competitive elements of all of it. So we very intentionally built an intellectual structure here where there's enough to go around. There are enough faculty, there's enough classes, there are enough opportunities for internships and research and all of these things so that everybody gets to go up together. And I think that that's a really important transition. It's also hard. Even our students who come in the most prepared will tell you that the workload and the rigor and just sort of the intellectual engagement of the classes tends to be a little bit more than they experienced in high school. The faculty are amazing. So their job is to find that comfort zone and push the students just outside of it, to really make them realize that they have potential they didn't know they had. And the way our faculty do this, it's just kind of extraordinary to watch. And so if your student is calling home and, you know, I'm so stressed, I have this paper, I have all of that, encourage them to talk to their professors. I mean, these are folks who made a decision to come to a school like Claremont McKenna because they value the teaching and they recognize the potential of students to contribute to research and all the other elements that make a college a college. All right. So next, just thinking about social life. This is probably the biggest transition. Students have a lot more free time on their hands than they used to, and they have virtually nobody looking over their shoulder telling them what to do. They're not checking in when they come home at night, right? It's a very, very different kind of environment. And nearly all of our students are living on campus all 4 years. And so the social life is very campus based. I mean, we joke sometimes that on the weekends, our parking lots are more full than during the week, because even on the weekends, students are not generally leaving. So it's a pretty social campus. Some of the things that we talk about a lot are making good choices. I mean, I will say that over and over again. Our students laugh when I say it because they know that's kind of my tagline. It's like, make good choices. And then we help them to understand what that is. So sleep is a huge thing. We talk a lot about sleep. It's harder to come by in college. And again, because it's a bit of with everybody living here together, like you really have to find ways to prioritize sleep and to get yourself into a positive routine. And that goes with everything else, right? Fitness, diet, balancing, academics, all of those things. During orientation, again, they will have tons and tons of time with all of the resource groups, so they know where to go. A lot of the work that Jess and her team do, for example, is helping students build out like success plans, health plans, like how do I want to tackle this so they really can achieve the goals that they want to and feel a little less overwhelmed. We also have a lot of co-curricular opportunities, over 70 clubs and organizations just at CMC, and then you can tack on another 100 or more through the 5C environment. That's a good thing. There are a lot of ways to get involved, but it can also pose a challenge because sometimes students overcommit or they don't get into the things that they thought they were going to. So they have this idea of like, I'm going to be, you know, at the Rose Institute, as an example, pretty competitive. Maybe they don't get in on that first attempt, and then suddenly it feels like a failure, and that can create a whole kind of spiral of, you know, is this the right place for me, and how am I going to make the connections I need to, and all of that. What I would tell you as somebody who's been in this community for close to 30 years now, there is no one path. There is not one best path. And the sort of perceived advantages of certain opportunities and all of that are largely false. I mean, there's so many ways to make it through the college with the kinds of connections and experiences that you want your student to have when they graduate. So if you're facing that, redirect the student, tell them to come talk to us, and we can help them find another avenue as well. All right, so I just wanted to provide maybe a little bit of framework as well. So when we think about well-being, we're really looking at it from a very holistic lens. And I'm certainly not going to talk through all of these dimensions of well-being, but we are focused on all of them, and we're thinking about it as how is that student, and making them, you know, really kind of at the center, but then thinking about how do they manage relationships in their community, their family, the society more generally. We want them to protect the things that really matter to them, while also opening up their hearts and minds to new kinds of experiences. And that can be challenging, but we have a whole research-based system that we're using here to try to drive that forward and to make sure that we are assessing, you know, are our programs effective? Is it helping? Sense of belonging is a hugely important aspect of being in college. We spend a lot of time on that, and how do we cultivate that and help people feel like they have, you know, strong connections. We also spend a lot of time talking with students about purpose. So it's not just getting a major, right? It's also feeling like there's something out there that's sort of calling you. It's something that you just feel matters, you know, that thing that you want to pour yourself into. And that could be a very small thing, or it could be a career choice. And so we do a lot of reflective work with students. We talk to them a lot about what are the things that they feel passionate about, and have you considered X and Y? And it's a very transformational approach rather than transactional. So rarely will a student walk into the dean of students office with an issue and just quickly walk away with a solution. They're more likely going to have an interaction where we say to them something along the lines of, wow, like that sounds really challenging. What are you thinking about doing with that? Or that, you know, that's an interesting thing. I can see where you're headed with that. Have you thought about talking to X and Y for a different opinion? Or that sounds like a good approach. Have you played out all the contingencies to make sure that, you know, you're not doing something that's going to have an unintended consequence? So Initially, that can be frustrating for students because it's a lot easier to come in and get an answer. And by the way, it's a lot easier to give an answer, but that's not what we're about. So we really are trying to coach students to that place of self-sufficiency and self-reflection.
Awesome.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Jess and she can talk a little more specifically now about all of the resources.
Yeah, thank you, DT. I always find it really helpful to just kind of ground everyone in like the holistic view that we, take of all of your students. And so when it comes to seeking care, right, there's lots of different ways that you can seek care. And I'm going to talk through some of the more specific ways through like health services, counseling, other supports on campus. So Student Health Services is one of those resources that is available. It's a shared service for all 5 undergrad schools. And they do a whole they offer a whole host of options for students when it comes to different appointments, different procedures, things like that. So I'm not going to run through everything on this list or the next slide, but just want you to have a little bit of an idea of the sort of things that students can go to health services for. So they do a lot of different tests, screenings, any sort of basic cold, flu, if someone's just not feeling well, they can make an appointment at health services. And they are open Monday through Friday for students. They also offer, prescriptions. There's a pharmacy called Hendricks Pharmacy that is within walking distance to the college, which is probably where almost everyone gets their medication because it's super close. They'll offer physical exams. They do minor labs. If students need more extensive labs, they'll, refer out to a Quest or LabCorp or something like that. They do very minor surgeries. They do offer a lot of sexual health, family health, gender affirming care. So they have a lot there. And anything outside of this, health services will help a student find an appropriate referral, as close by as possible, help find someone in network with their insurance. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Located in the same building as health services is Monsour Counseling and Psychological Services. So this is where students are going to go if they are seeking mental health care and support. MCAPS, which we call it here, they offer brief short-term therapy. So this is typically for students that might be experiencing a situational stressor, maybe transition to college, maybe a breakup, just trying to learn some more coping skills. So all students are given within just a couple days a brief assessment appointment. And their model is if students are kind of suitable for a shorter term level of care, they will take them in-house as a client. If the clinician and student decide together that the student might benefit from longer term care, more specialized support, they will work with them and often with us as well to help that student find, again, a local referral. So at Monsour, they have about 10 or 12 or so therapists, licensed clinicians. They have 3 psychiatrists that work on campus. All of these appointments are free for students. They offer different screenings. They hold a number of support groups, peer groups led by a therapist, workshops throughout the year, consultations if a student is just has a quick question or if they're worried about a peer, they're always willing to talk to folks in those situations as well. Timely care. I'm going to spend a minute on this. All of your students should have received an email on Monday telling them a little bit more about timely care and some information as far as how to get started with this platform. So this is a program that we started with at COVID and have really grown our partnership over the last 4 years. This is a telehealth platform for all students. It is free. They offer both medical and mental health care through this platform. It's very easy for students to sign up. They should all have an email. They can do it on their phone through the Timely Care Health and Wellbeing app, or they can, use the browser on their computer, sign up. They can schedule both medical and therapy appointments in advance. There's also 24 on-demand access as well. So if someone is feeling really ill and it's midnight or having, a lot of anxiety and just needs to kind of talk themselves down at 2 a.m., right? They can sign on and get connected to a provider within a couple of minutes. So we use this a lot for students who who might be, seeking care. Maybe they are okay not seeing someone in person, but this is free for students, no insurance, no nothing. So no strings attached, but it's a really great resource. Also through our office, through the Dean of Students office, we offer case management support and have an office of health promotion as well. So for those instances where students might be seeking referrals to off-campus therapists or other clinicians, or I mean, really students will just kind of come in our door and like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm not sure what to do about it. I need some support. We sit with them, have that moment like DT mentioned, where we are not kind of giving them a list of names to go leave our office and call, but sitting with them, really working with them to figure out what path makes the most sense. Is it finding somebody on campus to talk to? Is it getting connected with one of our academic success team members to talk a little bit more about prioritization and planning when it comes to your academics? Are you looking to get more involved on campus? Let's connect you with our student engagement team. Are you looking for a new psychiatrist? Let's talk about that. So kind of this like wraparound culture of care, I think that we have in terms of that. And so that's a really wonderful use of our kind of self-authorship lens that we use, and really kind of not doing for, but doing with the student, and really taking an individualized approach with each one. And then we have our health promotion. We have a director of health promotion who does different workshops, educational trainings, different things on campus to kind of talk to the broader community about some of those larger health and well-being topics. The Romero Success Coaches, so a couple of other kind of in-house Dean of Students resources on campus. We have our Romero Success Coaches. These are students, so they are not tutors per se for specific classes, but they offer peer support just kind of around general academic success and well-being. So helping folks like learn how to, read more efficiently, right? How do I better take notes in this class? How do I study for my chem exam versus my, history exam? How do I set goals? How do I create those habits? How do I get more sleep and stress, reduce my stress? So kind of a very holistic form of peer support on campus. Our Peer Health Ambassadors is still a relatively new program. It's been around about a year and a half. And this is a group of 8 students. They are managed through our office, and they are out in the campus community all year providing like peer-led programming across a wide variety of health topics. And then throughout the year, through different offices and units in our area, we have a number of mental health trainings that will offer different kind of wellness fairs, mental health fairs, and things like that. So we're always talking about it, not just mental health, but just overall well-being, and trying to think of, creative and effective ways to get that messaging across to students. Student health insurance plan, shifting gears just a little bit. So Lynn Hughes in our office is the health insurance guru, and she unfortunately is not on this call today, but her email is here for any questions that you might have. But definitely want to kind of give a general overview of this, because I know folks have a lot of questions. All students are automatically enrolled in our student health insurance plan. We call it SHIP. Students, though, do have the ability to apply for a waiver to use their own family or personal health insurance. So coverage began for students on SHIP August 1st. So they are covered if they're looking to receive care, even before they get to campus. The health insurance plan has a deductible, and this is, I think, very important for everyone to know, because I don't think it's messaged quite enough, but there's a $500 deductible for the student who is on SHIP each year. There are a lot of situations where this deductible is automatically waived. So if a student has to seek emergency services or urgent care, if a student needs to access a doctor but health services is closed, sometime on the weekend, if they are seeing someone off campus for mental health support, or if they're traveling a little bit away from Claremont for an appointment, those deductibles should be automatically waived. If your student is looking to make an appointment with primary care physician or a specialist, please have them contact Student Health Services, even if they already know who they're going to see or have that appointment already on the calendar. If they reach out to Health Services, they can assist them with a deductible waiver. So really, there are not any situations where a student should actually have to pay that deductible. There are ways around that. And then I think I am going to send it over to DT to wrap up.
All right, so I want to just talk a little bit about the parent part and what does your role, those of you that are parents on the call, what does your role look like transitioning? So I think the first thing is, remember sometimes that students call home when they're more likely when they're upset or they're having a tough time than when things are going great. So it doesn't mean that they're miserable all the time. It means maybe that they're calling you when they're not feeling great. And that's a big difference. So do lots and lots of listening. You know them really, really well. So if you're hearing something that is sending you into a panic, that's a great moment to reach out to our office just to say, hey, I'm not feeling great about this. Can you get some eyes on them? And we can do that. We are really focused on helping students make their own decisions. We want them to think about relationships. So if you can reinforce that, that will be helpful. So if a student is really worried about a class, the great advice is to go and talk to that professor or stop by the dean of students office and work with a success coach, or just go by and figure out who can help you out, because somebody will be able to. So what you won't do anymore is like reach out directly to a professor. So that is something that actually does stop. And we actually get that question a lot. Can I just reach out to the professor to find out? Keep in mind also that students, A, should not worry quite as much about grades as they used to, but B, they won't even know what they are in large part. So in some classes, a student might have, 2 or 3 papers in a midterm, and that's it for graded material. So when you say, how are you doing in the class, they might have a general sense, but it's not like they're getting progress reports and mid-semester grades and those sorts of things that they may have experienced in high school. I would say if you haven't revisited all the conversations about healthy decision-making since they were, sophomores or juniors in high school, this is a great time to revisit that. It all looks a little bit different. There's a lot of freedom here. And so just making sure that they're remembering that there's a big picture and to make really good choices. If your student has a pre-existing condition, so it could be a chronic health issue, it could be mental health, and I would have a really good conversation with them before they leave to make sure they fully understand all of it. And that could include if they had an IEP or 504 plan in high school, just make sure that the student knows everything there is to know about their own diagnosis and their medications and all of that sort of thing, so that when they come to college, they're able to think about that and talk about that and understand it. Let's see, FERPA. So FERPA is a federal—
Have a good one. Thanks.
No problem. FERPA is a federal rule that prohibits the sharing of students' educational records without their permission. FERPA, it does not matter if the student is 18 or not. If they are enrolled at the college, FERPA kicks in. So there is something to just know about that, which means even if your student is 17 when they come in, we aren't, sending grade information home. We're not calling with progress reports or any of those sorts of things. There is a FERPA waiver form online that you can sign, and your student has to sign. And what it does is provides permission to whichever people are designated to have access to whatever records are designated. So that could be a student could say, I'm okay with my mom having access to my conduct records, but not my academic records. So they have the control over that. So I would spend some time with your student talking about that. What kind of information do you want to be available? The way that works in Claremont is that it doesn't open up this line of communication where everything we send to your student is also sent to you. What it does mean is that you could call us or call the registrar's office, for example, and say, I have a signed FERPA waiver and I would like some information about, Matthew's grades. And then the registrar would be able to answer those questions. So you still have to initiate the contact, but it gives us permission to then have the conversation and to release the information. The HIPAA is the similar kind of rule, but it's for medical records. And most of you have already probably experienced that. So when your student turned 18, suddenly, right, they are the ones that get to make all of those decisions. And it's literally an overnight thing. Like if you go to a doctor office, they will no longer talk to you. It's really wild. I have a 19 and an 18-year-old, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. So I would just, again, say this is a good time to have a really good conversation with your student about all of their medical records and encourage them to keep you in the loop if you're worried about anything that's going on for them. Insurance cards. For many of us, our kids are not the ones carrying those cards. It's time to transition them over. So make sure they've got them in hand and they know how to use them and that they keep them in a safe place. Similarly, passports, like all of those sorts of things. At least once a year, we have a missing passport and issue because somebody threw it in a suitcase. So just reminders on all of those little adulting tips to have in mind. I would also send them with some kind of a health and wellness kit. So the kinds of medications that, they're comfortable using, it might be cough medicine or whatever it is that makes the most sense for your family to make sure that they've got those. And if you are worried, you're welcome to reach out to us. We are going to reach out to you if we are really worried. So FERPA is important and it does protect a student's educational records. If we have a concern for safety, like if we are really worried about a student or if they're facing, a possible academic suspension or any of those sorts of things, we are going to reach out. We'll let the student know we're going to do it, but we are going to make contact with the family to make sure that you're aware of things that could be really severe. So. Okay, with that, we've taken up a lot of airtime. I think we're going to pause and we can stop sharing. Our contact information is on here. It's also all available online. And of course, this was recorded. So if you need to go back and grab it, and we can answer any questions that have come up.
PT, I don't see any in the chat.
Okay.
So it is quite possible that you've just covered it.
Okay. So it's also very possible that you will click off and go, oh, wait, what did she say? Or what did Jess mention about X or Y? So don't hesitate to reach out. We are available and we love to talk to folks. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out. You also may have specific things, right? Specific student situations that you want to ask, which is great. Barbara, I just saw a question in the chat about, I think you were asking about emergency event preparation. If you want to come off mute and ask it more specifically, or I can provide a more general overview if you would like.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. This is Barbara. So we had an incident at my older daughter's other college where there was an event where a student unfortunately died and the college was not prepared and there wasn't mental health ready to go. There wasn't a plan in place. Yeah. Needless to say, they now have one because I was bothering them afterwards. Would love to hear what the school does or thinks about if there's an event that impacts, a particular group of students on campus, how that's handled. Do you guys have a plan? All that good stuff. Yeah,
it's such a good question. I'm glad you mentioned it. I'll give kind of a brief overview, and then if I leave anything out, just feel free to jump in. But so first of all, I'm so glad you raised it. I mean, this is real, and it's also real in Claremont because we have 5 schools. And although each school functions independently, we're also very much a consortium, and the students are socializing across the boundaries of the colleges. And so when we do have a tragic incident on one campus, there is a ripple effect that's felt throughout all of them. What we have done at CMC, we have a really detailed, it's called a post-vention plan. And I'm going to just speak specifically to the case of a potential death on campus, but the post-vention plan can actually be applied in a whole host of different kinds of circumstances. What it does is it details literally almost minute by minute what the response plan looks like. So we have an emergency policy group that is college-wide that gets together to manage sort of the big picture. So when we're thinking about, potential cancellation of courses, or we're talking about redirecting campus tours so they're not in a certain area of the campus, or whatever that looks like, we have an EPG group that is managing that in real time. At the Dean of Students level, then, we have also established protocols with our resident assistants, our director of public safety, our Monsour Counseling Center, and the staff in our office, which includes the resident assistant, so that anytime we have a situation like that, there is a plan of action and it's all been assigned out, so everybody knows what they're doing. One of the things that I have found really helpful and very important is that we also maintain a list of students that we know have been touched by tragedy. So it could be, you know, maybe they've lost a friend or a family member to suicide. Maybe they have, you know, they were in a traumatic incident in high school, those sorts of things. And when they disclose that to us, we maintain a document that we update regularly, so that if there is a moment where we have, let's say, the death of a student on campus, within half an hour, we will have somebody in touch with those students to check in and just to say, hey, you know, this thing happened, we're checking in, we are here to support you, let us know what you need. We'll have on-site counselors also within an hour. That's consistent across the consortium. So we never want something like that to happen, but it can happen, it does happen. And I feel, Barbara, like we're in a pretty good place to manage it.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I really appreciate the answer.
Sure. See, I see a question from Kippy Joseph. How has the office contributed to orientation for the first year students to start on the right foot with peers and culture? And so, such a great question. We are all over this with orientation. The orientation schedule is really busy. But what we're trying to do is exactly what you're suggesting. We're trying to make sure that all of our first year students know what is available to them and that they finish that week and start classes really feeling like they belong here, that they have a good feeling about the place. We talk about it in kind of 4 primary ways. So 1 is you belong here. 2 is it's hard and it's supposed to be. 3 is, but we've got you, right? We have tons of resources to help support you in that. And the 4th major message that they're going to hear over and over again is it's your journey. So that is kind of being reinforced throughout the week, and then it's kind of reinforced throughout the year. We have first year guides who are assigned to all of your students. These are upper class students. They all showed up today, so they're going to go through 10 days of really intensive training as well to help our first year students get off the ground on the right foot. Our RAs are back today. They are also going through extensive training, and our office oversees orientation. So we've been planning all summer. Let's see.
Another question about earthquake response plan.
Yeah, that's great to see as well. So we are in an earthquake zone for sure in Southern California. The director of public safety also oversees all emergency management for the college. So we talk to the students about, and in the RA meetings as well. So we do hall meetings with all first year students that are mandatory, where those protocols are reviewed. We also run evacuation drills more for fire and other things that happen all during the within the first 10 days of the term. We do the fire drills and all the evacuation drills. So all of that stuff is practiced. And then later in the semester, usually October, California has it's called the Great Shakeout. And so we are a part of that. So with other institutions across the country where it's basically we pretend that we're having an earthquake and we send out the alerts and everybody has to go into the mode to manage all of that. So I see also a question about the camping part of orientation. So it's camping light. So we have what we call WO trips. These are welcome orientation adventures. And so after the students move in on Sunday, they will start orientation Sunday night. So we have a big session after the goodbye and after dinner where all the students launch with orientation. Then Monday morning, they head off on their WO trips. And about half the class will go to cabin camping. So it's not really camping. They're in cabins, there's indoor plumbing, there's showers, the whole thing, but it's up in the mountainy area right near campus. So about an hour away at Pali. So they're able to go up there and they, over the course of the 2.5 days, they're eating together. They're doing all kinds of activities to get to know one another and get to know the campus. They hear a lot about resources on those trips. And they're all kinds of activities of varying degrees of physicality or not. So some students like to hike and some students like to not hike and want to be inside playing games and doing other things. So there's plenty of options for all. And any student who requested cabin camping was placed in that. We also have another set of trips that are beach camping, and those are more actual camping. So if your student is going on a beach camping trip, they are going to be heading out on a bus with their first year guides, with a bunch of tents and food preparation and camp stoves and towels and the whole works. And they will go to different camping locations that we've pre-reserved across the Southern California coast. We visited all of those this summer to make sure that they're ready to go. All of the first year guides are trained in CPR and first aid. And again, they have 10 days of training to make sure they're ready to run these trips. Let's see, and I had just a private question of how many people are in each of the sites. So it depends a little bit on the site, but for the most part, the first year guide groups are around 19 students. And then they have, if you're on a beach camping trip, there are 4 first year guides also assigned. So it's about a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio, somewhere in that range.
I also had a question about information about chaplains and where to find more information on chaplains and different faith meetings and things. So that is through our McAllister Center, which is another shared resource, and I'll put the link in the chat for everyone.
Perfect. Bardia?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, thank you for the Zoom. The second thing I wanted to ask, do we ever meet up with each other if I'm going camping, and if we're on the coast, has it happened in the past where maybe you're close enough and you just meet with another group, or maybe it could happen, but it's not like a planned thing, perhaps?
Yeah, it definitely happens. So some of the sites are much bigger. So, and so they'll have like 2 or 3 WO groups, they call them WO groups. And so the WO groups will be kind of like within the same campsite, but independently with their group.
Okay.
And, but then, yeah, that's exactly what happens. So they'll all go down to the beach together and, hang out for the day. They might cook separately, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, for those, and similarly, if you go on the cabin camping trip, we have a lot of the groups that are there. So they're in their groups, but there's a lot of exchange. So you'll have a chance to meet a bunch of folks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, I see a question about air pollution and wildfires. So there's the AQI, so it's basically the air quality index. There's a link that you can go to and type in the zip code to see what the air quality is. We do not have a fixed protocol that determines everybody's action. If the air quality is not good, what we do is send out alerts though that gives a sense. So if we have a really bad air quality day, maybe there's a fire at Mount Baldy or something where there's a lot of smoke in the area. First of all, it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen periodically. The emergency management folks will send out an email to the campus just indicating, hey, the air quality is not very good. You may want to stay indoors. And if you have health issues, think about that and potentially consult with your treatment providers. In athletics, so if you're a varsity athlete, they have protocols there as well. So there's a whole process by which those thresholds are measured. And then they make determinations on whether outdoor activity can happen. Does it need to be moved indoor? Can it not happen at all? So there are published protocols within athletics, but people basically make their own choices after being informed of the air quality for the general population. Rebecca, you're on it. I don't know how you found that so fast, but well done. In the chat there, the AQI site is up. All right, I think we got through them, Jeannie.
Yes, I'm not seeing any other questions on my end. So of course, as has been mentioned a few times, if something does come up after we're done with the call today, you have several emails here that you can reach out. However, If you don't remember those emails, you can always email parents@cmc.edu. In our office, that's our job. We'll get you to the right place, get you to the right person, and get your questions answered. So as I also mentioned, this wraps up our virtual opportunities as part of parent and family orientation. So the next time we will come together will be in person for those of you who are able to make it. You can also, there's a lot of information about packing. If you have any last minute questions about what to bring, what not to bring, on our website, cmc.edu, click families, and there's a lot of information there regarding orientation, regarding road trips, regarding international student orientation. So whatever you need. And I would just like to thank our special guests today, Diana and Jess, and Jimmy, who I think might still be here somewhere. Thank you for spending time with us today. There he is. Thank you for spending time with us today. We really do appreciate it. And we'll see you all on the 18th.